All right, so you drive a car, which means you pass some sort of test to get out on the road with that license. How well do you remember those rules? We have two Greensboro police officers here today to give you a refresher. Maybe it's not you that needs a refresher. Maybe it's your spouse or somebody else in your family. Either way, gather everyone around. Corporal Andrew Muldowney and Officer Thomas Fetzer from GPD's Traffic Safety Unit are here to explain rules of the road. All right, so here's how you get your question to them. You text us. It's 336-379-5775. Remember, your question is anonymous, so no one knows you're asking the question, but they are giving you the answer in real time. All right, so first and foremost, let's talk about what to do when emergency vehicles are coming with their lights on and you're driving.
So the first thing to do is if you can safely move your vehicle to the right lane, to the lane to the right, or if you can move it to the shoulder safely, that's the best course of action when an emergency vehicle is approaching from behind. That's the course of action that we're expecting. Certainly, and this has happened to me on several occasions on the highway, don't come to a dead stop in the middle of the lane while we're coming up behind you at a high speed with lights and sirens on.
Okay, so you want us to move over to the side, and if you see somebody that's over there on that right side, if we can't get over, you know, like if you have stopped with somebody and we can't get over, you want us to just like slow down.
That's correct. So that is an actual law in North Carolina. It's the law to move over for emergency vehicles that are on the side of the road. And that includes police, fire, EMS, and even tow trucks. If they're on the side of the road conducting some type of business and their lights are on, it's the law for you to move over if you can safely do so. And if you can't, to slow down.
All right, so we're going to talk about this. Many people don't know this. North Carolina is an absolute speed law state. What does that even mean?
So we've been asked the question several times, you know, how much over the speed limit can I go and not get a ticket?
Yes.
And you know, it's kind of like a myth that you're granted like 10 miles an hour over 15. Some people think 20, but North Carolina is called an absolute speed law state, which means if you're doing 1 mile an hour over the speed limit, then you can be given a ticket and cited for that. Now, with that being said, are you going to get pulled over for doing 36 and a 35? No, probably not. And a lot of officers do give a reasonable amount over because we know you can't stay at that speed limit. You know, there is some varying as you're driving, but the important thing is to stay as close to that speed limit as you can. What a lot of people will do is they'll do about 10 over, but then they got to go past somebody and they're speeding an extra 10 miles an hour over. And next, you know, you're 20 over the speed limit. And then you start moving into some stiffer fines and court issues there.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so the 10 miles over the speed limit law, that's a myth, people. We want you to know it is a myth. All right, how about this? So we get into a fender bender, or we get into some type of accident. The first thing I do, of course, is take pictures of all the things after I know that everybody's okay, because I want documentation. What about the exchanging of information?
Well, it's perfectly, in the state of North Carolina, to be a reportable, what's considered a reportable crash, there has to be at least $1,000 combined damage or more, or some type of injury. Anything less than $1,000 and without an injury, basically what happens is information is exchanged between the drivers. And that includes insurance information, personal information, including phone number and address and everything. And so, yes, you can do that if you're in a minor fender bender and you and the other driver pull off the side of the road. Of course, you can exchange information if you want to. However, we recommend to have an officer respond just to facilitate, to make sure that information is correct and up to date for each driver. So when the information is exchanged, it's the correct information.
So when they do give you their information, do you automatically like look it up to make sure that what they gave you was correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Ah, that is the key. Okay, they actually look it up before they put it on there to make sure that it's correct. So that is good to stay and wait for that. All right, let's talk about the change of address rule in North Carolina when it comes to your driver's license. How long do we have?
Yeah, it's 60 days to get your address change on both your license, your driver's license, and your registration plate. And that includes moving to the state as well. So if you move from, Greensboro to High Point, within 60 days, you need to get all your information changed over.
And of course, that means that you could be cited for that if they stopped you for something else.
You sure can, yep.
Okay. Is it like you have a big like arrow over your car that shows that you didn't do it? No, but you should be aware that that can happen, that you can be cited for it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So one last thing before we head to break and we take your questions. How do you handle a broken traffic light, like when all the lights are out?
So what essentially happens when all the lights are out at an intersection, it's to be treated as a four-way stop intersection, as if you were approaching an intersection that had 4 stop signs. And the law is that the driver to the immediate right always has the right of way. Now, I'm sure you've experienced, as long as everybody else, along with me, that typically what happens in that type of situation is courtesy prevails, and the person usually that comes to the intersection last or second or third allows the people that arrive there first to go before them, which is perfectly fine as long as it's done safely. But the law does state that it's to be treated as a 4-way stop intersection, and the driver to the immediate right always has the right of way.
Always has the right of way, the driver to the right. All right, we're taking a quick break. We've got questions about tailgating, about turning left on red lights, and that kind of thing. So we're going to be answering those questions and much more. Make sure you get your question in 336-379-5775.